Hello, welcome to the latest instalment of James's Wrestling Shoot interviews with the great and the good of professional wrestling. And with me, I don't believe he's the first author I've ever had, but maybe he is. And I'm actually even going to show you a book for his brother, Chris Candido. No gimmicks needed. It is, of course, Jonny Candido. What's going on, dude?
Hey, brother, what's happening?
Man,
I'm glad you got the book.
I nearly messed that one up straight away as well, but I plowed through.
Nah, it sounded good, man.
Yeah. Do you know what, actually? The first thing I was actually going to ask is, the book's called No Gimmicks Needed, and I was looking through Chris Candido's career and everything, but he actually had quite a few gimmicks and characters going on. He was I've actually written down the Blonde Bomber in Japan, the Avenger in Smoky Mountain, and, of course, Skip. At what point did Chris just sort of look in the mirror and just think, God, I just wish I could just be myself?
Well, he wasn't very happy with the gimmick in WWE, but that was kind of like at a time of like wacky gimmicks and stuff. But when he went to ECW and he was just allowed to be himself, Chris Candido, no gimmicks needed, and he just went from there. I think in ECW he was just kind of like let off the chain and let go, let do whatever he wanted. Because WWE at that time, the Body Donnas had their run, and then after their run, they wanted to put my brother. Like he started to train The Rock and Mark Henry and all those guys. And he was like 23, 24. And he's like, I have my early 20s to live my dream. I don't want to be a freaking trainer. I want to go out and do it, So that's when he made the jump to ECW. I mean, years later when he was 30, he's like, oh man, I wish I should have just stayed with the stable job. But that's kind of what happened, Yeah.
Did he ever create some characters with you, or share some ideas, whatever, to come up with something larger than life? Obviously, because he was going into the WWF in '95, I believe, and obviously that's the land of the giants, even in the mid '90s when they were having all sorts of crazy characters. So was he thinking of something for himself, maybe, to get stood out?
Not that he ever told me. I mean, he would goof around about stuff. I know he was Mr. Charisma for a while on the indies, when he was younger, and he was good at that because, good looking guy, good shape, kind of acted like the cocky kind of heel. I felt like that, that worked for him. But, I guess your wrestling gimmick is just kind of yourself, amplified a little bit. And that's kind of what he did in ECW. So yeah, the WWE times it was fun. I feel like he enjoyed his time there and he kind of took it as paying his dues. But then, when he went to ECW, it was he can kind of control the creative process a little more.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you what, we're going to get to ECW in a bit, but and this is sort of an ECW question straight away, is we can't tell the story of Chris Candido, obviously without you, but also without Balls Mahoney. So straight into Balls, dude. What's occurring? When did Chris first meet him?
So I could literally take you. I stopped at my parents' house, and the house me and Chris grew up in. They still live here. And Balls' house is 5 blocks north, over the train tracks, another 2 blocks, make a left, and that's Balls' house. So there's a highway that's 8 blocks up that way. The beach is this way. If you want to beat the light at that highway, you make a left and you're right at Balls' house. So we would literally pass his house 10 times a day. But they met in I don't know, I want to say 6th grade. And then they both loved wrestling. And then my brother he was already training, and they both started running shows in Spring Lake. My brother would rent the ring from the Monster Factory, or they'd give it to him. And then my brother, Balls, and it's funny because there's pictures of the two of them, and Chris looks like he's 13 and Balls looks exactly the same. He's when he's 13, he has a beard and chest hair, and it's freaking hilarious. And Bam Bam Bigelow's from that area. He's 9 years older than Chris. So he was already semi-established at the time. So he'd come to the shows at Marucci Park. And so it was a little wrestling community around this little area, So it was cool.
Dude, so actually, I didn't even... Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, I just did an interview with Pro Wrestling Insider the day before yesterday, and I was telling a bunch of funny ball stories. So, and anytime you want to hear some funny ball stories, let me know once we get going, because I got tons of them.
I want to know one in 2 questions time, in fact. One of them actually was, so did Chris do amateur wrestling? Because I heard that Balls ended up getting thrown out of amateur wrestling because he broke some kid's back. Do you remember that? Do you remember that happening?
Yeah. I heard, I don't think it was quite that. That kind of might have been a little urban legend. He was an amateur wrestler. Yeah, Chris was an amateur wrestler. He was really freaking good. He was in this book. I'm sure it's in the book, but when he was in high school, every year he was in Who's Who of American high school students, because my brother always got straight A's, was a standout amateur wrestler. And yeah, Balls was an amateur wrestler too. And I forget what happened. I think he did get tossed off the wrestling team. I forget for what though. He probably, like he said, he like punched a referee. I forget what the legit story was, but
yeah, I think
there is some truth. There is some truth to that.
Yeah, the story I think he told was he broke some kids back. Oh, someone told, and he broke some kids back, and then he carried on trying to wrestle him or fight him or just cause a massive scene, and then he was barred for life or something.
Yeah, he was known for doing shit like that.
Well,
I have some funny stories.
Well, actually, I was the next one I was going to ask was Balls always just like proper ill-tempered? Was he always like had the short fuse going on?
Yeah, I mean, he was so easy to get fired up. Like something as simple as, like, I'd pass his house and I'd stop by. He'd be making barbecue, and I'm like, "Oh, dude, you got to put more lighting fluid in those charcoals." He's like, "They're briquettes." I'm like, "Oh," then I know I'm to mess with him. I'm like, "Dude, those charcoals aren't hot. They're freaking briquettes." And he would just like get mad about everything. He was so easy to fuck with. It was beautiful. So I have so many stories of him just like losing his shit.
Do you remember the focal point story?
Which one?
I believe Balls tells in like a U shoot a few years ago where he's going absolutely crazy and someone says the words focal point, and that was meant to calm him down apparently.
You know what? I don't know quite how to explain him. He grew up, he was kind of like spoiled. So he was kind of like a spoiled kid, and if he didn't get his way, he would fucking lose his mind. And that's like with everything. Like I remember, I put it like this: he would get out of situations with like police or whatever, just because he'd be like, "What are you talking about?" And he'd like get like up in their face and be like, all right, dude. Like he was just so like just over the top about everything, you know. And he's very easy to fuck with and piss off, you know. It was so much fun,
dude.
So
best Balls Mahoney stories, man. I know you've got a ton, but I always like the fight stories.
All right, so let's see, good fight story. There's a couple of them. All right, so one day I go over to Balls' house. His real name's John, so if I say John, it means Balls. So me and him used to always trade shit, like gimmicks, like pills, fikes, somas, whatever. So I go over his house at like noon one day. I'm like, "Yo, you got any gimmicks?" He's like, "Yeah, here you go." He gives me like 7-8 Vicodin. Maybe like at noon, my cousin Vinny comes by. He's like, "You got any Vikes?" I'm like, "I don't, but Balls does." So we go over to Balls' house. I'm like, "Yo," I'm like, "John, let me get a couple gimmicks." "I don't have any." I'm like, "You do so? I just saw him before." He's like, "I don't have any." I'm like, "All right." I'm like, "Let me get a cigarette then." He's like, "All right, they're in my room." So I go into his room, and then sitting right on his counter is a big bottle of Vicodin. So his house is small. So I pop the bottle. I start dumping him in my hand. Then I hear, and he catches me red-handed. So I throw him in my mouth. And he goes, "You steal my medication!" Boom! And we both fucking collide. My cousin Vinny's like 130 pounds, so he runs out of the room. So me and Balls are fighting. So he's got a small house, so we're not really getting off punches. We're just like fucking strangling each other and tearing his kitchen apart. Boom, boom. Finally, we fight to the front door. He's like, "Get out of here! You stole my medication." I'm like, "All right, dude, shut the fuck up. I'll give him back to you." He's like, "Get out of here! You stole my medication." I'm like, "Bro, the neighbors don't need to fucking hear." He's like, "Get out of here! You stole my medication." I'm like, "Motherfucker!" So I ran back. I speared him into his couch. We start fighting again. Boom, 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 boom. We're fighting. Wreck the kitchen again. Knock plates all over the place. We fight into his room, and he's got like swords and daggers and shit like hanging on the wall. And I get a little bit of space between us. And I was a boxer, so I'm like, if I want to take it there, I can let my hands go. And our eyes locked for that like 1 second. And he fucking grabbed the samurai sword off the wall and swung it at my head. And I like dipped it. And I'm like, "Really, bro? You're gonna cut my fucking head off? Fuck you." And he's like, "No, JC, it's not like that." I'm like, "Ah, man, fuck that shit." And I walked away. And I got like halfway down the block, and I turned back around. And we fucking hugged it out. But yeah, he swung a sword right at my fucking head. So that was pretty crazy. in the book, it tells a fight story about the arena when it wasn't him. It was like a whole bunch of the guys came out there. Me and my brother and Tammy was there, and a couple of my friends. We were getting ready to leave, and our car was like blocked in by these like biker dudes, and they were like leaning up against our car. And Tammy being Tammy's like, "Get the fuck off our car, you dirtbags!" And the guy's like, "You better control your woman." Tammy's like, "Fuck you!" And then my brother had his arm in a sling because he just his bicep just ripped. So he's like, "Hey man, don't fucking talk to her like that." So they're going back and forth, and then somebody throws a drink in her face. I see my brother go running. He clocks the guy with the one good hand that he has, and then people start putting the boots to my brother. I'm like 15, so there's not much I could do. I fucking run into the locker room. I'm like, "Yo!" The first two people I see is Too Cold Scorpio and Tracy Smothers, and they're like hanging in the hallway. I'm like, "Dude, Chris and Tam, you're fighting in the parking lot." And they're like, "Oh, they're always fighting." I'm like, "No, like people are like beating the shit out of them." So they come running out. Then I see Tommy Rich, Devon, Sandman, Balls, Big Dick Dudley, Bam Bam, all just come rushing out. First thing I see is the guy that's the main perpetrator. Tommy Rich takes him in a side headlock, and Devon Dudley runs over, just goes boom, 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 just starts smashing this guy's head in. Bam Bam picks some dude up, smashes him against the wall, knocks the shit out of him. Big Dick Dudley, dude, the ECW guys are just smashing dudes left and right. Tracy Smothers doing his little boxing thing, pow, pow, knocking guys out. It was freaking intense. It was awesome. So they definitely cleaned house. And then later, so the cops came. My brother, they brought everybody else back in the building. I was in the car, and like Tracy was outside in like still in his in his gear, and one of like the main perpetrators came walking by, and Tracy just took off after him, knocked him down, started beating the shit out of him again, like in front of the cops. The cops like pulled Tracy off, but that was a massive melee. It was something else.
Dude, did someone get a gun at some point to sort of like scare him off?
At a different time, but not
right.
not at this point. That's a whole other story. Yeah. But yeah, no guns in this point. Like there were some like weapons that made it out into the fight, but there wasn't any guns.
Did you hear that the news got all the way to Vince McMahon?
What, about that fight?
Yeah, about that fight. And he cornered Too Cold Scorpio. And instead of like, reprimanding him, he almost, without actually giving him a slap on the back saying, "Hey, you're a tough guy. I like it."
Yeah. I think you meant like he was going to get like in trouble for it. But
yeah.
No, he was one of the first guys out there. But there were so many fists flying that, let's just say the ECW guys definitely won. There wasn't a freaking scratch on any of them.
Well, I'm going to skip. I'm actually going to skip behind because the ECW question, I had that very specifically written down as well because I really want to know that. So that's cool as well. But first things first, the Monster Factory. When did Chris go there?
I want to say he started when he was like 12, like some crazy age like that. He wanted to be a pro wrestler since he knew what it was, and even before he knew what it was, he just. So me and him are half brothers, but I never knew that. He never knew that. It didn't matter because we grew up in the same household. But he would go see his father some weekends, and his father remarried a woman named Giselle. Her father was Popeye Chuck Richards, who was a pro wrestler. And my brother would go with Popeye Chuck Richards to his house, and he'd see all these big jacked up dudes with tattoos and long hair. And he was telling me, he's like, "Man, I just saw all these dudes." He's like, "They were all jacked up." He's like, "I didn't really know what they did." He's like, "I just wanted to be one of them." And then like he found out what they did, and he just became obsessed with pro wrestling. And like I have a collection up in our old office. Like the fourth floor of our house was Chris's and mine, and it's like two big rooms. One is like a hangout room with like couches and TVs and shit, and the other one, my brother made his office. It's got like it's got to be like 10,000 wrestling magazines up there, all old posters, just crazy memorabilia, all kind of shit up there. And there's the wrestling magazines, I think, go back to like when wrestling magazines even started. Like there's some up there from like the early 60s. And like in the book it says like me and Tommy Dreamer went through them together. That kind of the story got lost in translation. I was going to see Dreamer at one of his shows, and I grabbed like a stack of, let's say, like 50 wrestling magazines. I threw them in a shoebox and I gave it to him. and then he would like text me, because what Chris would do is he would change all the rankings to his liking, and then he would book his own little shows, like with time for like, it'd say like, Colonel De Beers promo, Abdul the Butcher versus Haystacks Calhoun commercial break. But he would like break them all down. So Dreamer would text me all these things, and be like, dude, your brother was crazy. He was amazing, booking all these shows. So yeah, he was obsessed.
Yeah, I
so
hope
from day one.
I hope he had Colonel De Beers losing. God, that guy. So you could tell the AWA was going downhill when he was on top. Jesus.
I just use that as a, I was trying to think of like the time period.
Right, sorry, I know this is going to sound a bit rude because I'm sort of looking down a bit, but I refuse to wear my glasses, cool. And I'm really struggling here.
It's all good, bro.
So the first real promotion of note, 'cause he did indies for years, was actually USWA, which I was quite surprised about. What do you know about his experiences down there? I take it you never went there because you were too young at the time.
How old? Let's see. I mean, I started going around when I was like 7. He was 17. He's 10 years older than me. So I remember him bringing me to those shows, but I don't quite remember. The first show I remember was, let's say I was maybe like 9. And I remember Terry Funk and Eddie Gilbert were the main event. And I remember watching that and being like, whoa, and Chris and Sabu worked each other that night. And it was really an experience, man. It was cool. So I assume that's what it was. It was right before they went to Japan, I believe, for FMW. I think that was like around the same time.
Yeah. Did you get a load of feedback on the USWA state of affairs? Because was it all like wrestling in barns for $20 a night sort of ridiculousness?
Yeah, I you know what? I'm really not sure. The ones that I really can remember are NWA, Smoky Mountain, WWF, ECW, WCW, and then later on. I think I must have been too young to really remember what promotion it was. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, my brother's like 12 years older than me, so I fully understand sort of being like dragged around here and there.
Yeah.
Right. I'll tell you what then. I'll sack off US. Forget. I'm using my Mancunian colloquialisms. So cool. I'll go straight to Smoky Mountain Wrestling then. So that was probably the first promotion that Chris really settled in. So and did you also go down there, see the Legoland, see him wrestling and all that?
Yeah, absolutely. I remember when he first went there, like my family's very go to college, do the right thing, get your diploma, all that stuff. And he went there under the guise of going to the University of Tennessee. And my parents knew he was wrestling too. But I remember us going down there, and so we went to Dollywood, which is like Dolly Parton's like a country singer, and they have like an amusement park with roller coasters and shit. And we went to Dollywood, and then we went to the show that night. And I remember it was just so different than here. We got tickets, and we're walking into the show, and we see these two younger ladies, and we're like, oh, do you know where seats 2A and 2B are, whatever? They're like, yeah, you're right by us, honey. And we sat by them. As soon as the show starts, they're like, dirty white boy, you piece of shit, you got bigger titties than your mama. They started losing their mind and throwing shit, and we're like, whoa. They took it to a different level down there, the fans. They were intense.
Yeah.
So, but I think that whole Smoky Mountain, that whole group of guys that came up together, all are really, really good. It was more like a slower paced kind of psychology based wrestling, as opposed to high spots and shit. It was more like read the crowd, go off what they're feeling kind of deal.
Yeah. Well, Chris, I mean, he did quite a lot of the high spot sort of thing as well. I mean, did he have to learn to sort of tone that down for the crowd because they didn't get it?
Yeah, he did. I forget who he was working. It was one of his first matches there. And, the other guy's out of the ring. He hits the ropes, does this somersault helo over the top rope. And here's crickets, and Cornette's he's like, the next time, baseball slide out there, go to kick the guy, he'll move, kick the steps and sell your foot like you heard it. And he did that, kicked this and sold his foot, and then people went freaking crazy, laughing and clapping and shit. So they didn't really like appreciate they enjoyed wrestling more as they were more old fashioned, let's say.
They were true believers still.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, you mentioned Cornette, and he is my absolute favorite topic to talk about in the whole wide world. In this, anyway. First time you met him, and first time you saw him lose his mind at somebody.
So I met him when I went down there briefly. I got to hang out with him because me and my brother and him went to a Kiss concert together, and I think he lost his mind at the Kiss concert on one of the vendors. I think it was over like they didn't give him cheese for his nachos or something like that. He started to dust up at the Kiss concert, but he was a cool dude. I like Cornette. I still talk to him, not like on the phone, but I email back and forth, if I have something to say or vice versa. But yeah, he's a cool dude. Yeah. And you like him or you don't like him?
Oh, I love Cornette. He must be kidding. I used to do his YouTube for years on, and then he went sort of a separate way and everything, but I did his YouTube for years. So I love Cornette. He's the man still. And also just because, hang on.
Oh, get out of here. Sick.
I've only seen him once. I'm not like a mega Kiss fan or anything, but I saw him once in 2019, and they were, do you know what? They were better than I thought they were going to be, because I've seen some videos of them in the early 2010s, on the American Chat Show. I don't know, it's like Letterman or something when they're in the basement.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he's just
no good,
gone.
huh?
He's just gone. Yeah, his voice is absolutely gone, but he was really good. They must have had the auto-tuners on that day.
Oh, dude, when we... I went to see him 4 or 5 times. I only got into him because of Chris, and he was a huge Kiss fan, and I think part of it too was the show. He really loved the Gene Simmons blowing fire and all the crazy shit, But we went to quite a few Kiss shows, and just through him, I know every lyric to every Kiss song ever. Well, I mean, up until they took their makeup off. But yeah, I was, pretty much whatever my brother was into, I was into too. I'm the younger brother, so. But yeah, we had a good time with going to Kiss concerts and stuff. It's pretty crazy. I don't know if you've read the right in the intro to the book is a crazy story. Maybe 2-3 years after he died. So the only job my brother ever had besides a pro wrestler was working down at the beach down the street from us, and he's a locker boy at the beach. It's for work when you're 13, 14, 15, you sweep the steps off, you empty the garbage cans, little shit like that. Most of the time you jump in the ocean, whatever. So there's a north end and a south end, and there's the ocean, and then a boardwalk, and then there's a pool on the south end and a pool on the north end that gets filled with ocean water at night, every night. And so Chris used to do that when he was a kid for extra money or whatever. So right by where you'd walk into the pool, there's a bench that has a plaque on it. It says, this bench is dedicated to the memory of Chris Candido, our son, our champion by the beach. So he's got his own little bench. So one day I'm getting off the beach, I'm walking up to the pool area with the lockers and everything, and sitting on my brother's bench is Peter Criss, the drummer from Kiss. I'm like, Peter Criss? He's like, yeah, man, what's up? I was like, dude, I just got to tell you that it's, my brother was the biggest Kiss fan, and you're sitting on his bench. I'm like, that's really cool to see you there. He's like, oh, cool, man. Thanks. I didn't want to make it a big drawn out thing. It was before selfies and everything, but it was just out of every there's benches up and down the entire beach. Out of every bench he sits on Chris's, it was pretty cool.
That is pretty cool. It's a really nice story as well. I will just cut this bit out. I ordered the book. It got it actually got it today. So I've written all these questions. So if I sound a bit ignorant of what's in the book, I do apologise. And I'll be reading it afterwards anyway. I'll cut that out. But I'll go for Brian Lee.
Dude, he was...
he's just a complete, no one seemed to know anything about the dude. Everyone thought he was dead for years. Because he's just completely went off the map.
That's true. Yeah, he did. For a while, he was the fake Undertaker. I remember him from Smoky Mountain and from ECW. super cool dude. The first night Chris went to ECW, right? This is a pretty crazy story. So let's say I'm 14. So that means he's 24, or I'm 15, he's 25. We're at my Aunt Kathy's house for somebody's birthday, and a limo pulls up. My mom's like, Chris's nickname in our family and our neighborhood is Cook. When I was a little kid, I couldn't say Chris, so I called him Cook. And so Cook was just his nickname, so everybody called him. So my mom's like, Johnny, Cook's here with a limousine. And I go out there. He's like, dude, I just left the WWF and going to this new federation. Come take a ride with me. I'm like, all right. So I jump in the back of the limo, and he's already got in his gear and everything. We pull up to the ECW arena, and I see all these fans like trying to look in the limo, banging on the freaking windows. And like, I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, do these fans even know who he is? Like, I hope this works out, blah, blah, blah. So we get there, and he's, as soon as he gets there, he's on him for Spike Dudley. And the crowd's absolutely electric. My brother hits him with the top rope power bomb, cuts a promo, place is going nuts. And so then he came back, to the locker room. Everybody's, giving him attaboys and everything. And the match that night, the main event was Brian Lee versus Tommy Dreamer in the scaffold match. And I remember everybody like hanging around the Eagles Nest, like, which is like where everybody would chill and watch the show. And everybody was like, oh, I wonder who's going to take this bump, like meaning Dreamer. And then Brian Lee took it. And even the boys were like, holy shit. And that's the first time I ever saw anything like that too. So I was like, oh my gosh, this is really cool. So yeah, that was my first ECW experience with Brian Lee versus Tommy Dreamer in that scaffold match.
Nice, very nice. I'll tell you what, I'm going to ask one more SMW question, but it's not really an SMW question. Chris Candido won the NWA heavyweight title in 1994. Was it sort of a mixed bag of emotions of, I can't believe I've got this heavyweight belt, all the greats, Jack Briscoe, Dusty Rhodes, Ric Flair, Harley Race and everything. But at that time, where it's diminished, not really been on TV for a few years.
Yeah. I think he was very happy, obviously, to have it. And it definitely meant a lot to him to have that on his pedigree, because he had been, like I said, he'd been watching wrestling. I can't even begin to tell you how many tapes and Betamaxes and everything he has. So I think even just as a, even if it didn't have the same oomph it had, just as like a symbol, him having that really meant a lot to him, because Ric Flair is his idol. And, so he really appreciated it, that he got to carry that. And then he dropped it to Dan Severn before he went to Smoky Mountain, I believe. But yeah, he was stoked about the NWA. He had all of us, like my family isn't big pro wrestling. They don't really like it, but they went to that one because they told him it was going to be a good one. So we all took pictures in the back with it and stuff. It was cool.
Did you see him lose it to Dan Severn? Because that's such a weird match, and he went on for like a 4-year run afterwards. He was the NWA guy for years.
Yeah, I did. I remember Dan Severn, my brother kind of taught him professional wrestling, so it was a great guy to drop it to. I mean, you know what I'm saying? So again, I was young at the time, and so these aren't quite like me and him when we were together all the time. We were mostly goofing off. We weren't really talking about serious shit most of the time. But yeah, he was a pretty laid back dude. He never got too much about things. But yeah, he was stoked to have that belt, most definitely.
Right, I'm actually going to go straight to WWF now. So, but there's actually a quote from you that I'm going to ask you about, because I was a bit confused by it. It says, an interview you gave to Pro Wrestling Stories a few years ago, you said that Chris had been doing jobs for the WWF since 1991. I can't find any record of that until he went in 95. So where, do you remember who he faced, what event it was?
No, I don't. I just remember him telling me, when we... So around late 04, when he cleaned his act up, was making his comeback, me and him were going to Raw, and then he was talking to TNA at the same time. So and when we went back there, they weren't sure if I was wrestling that night. He's like, it's almost like controlled chaos. And I might have just pulled that out of the air, like, that year out of the air. But I know he had been doing like working on house shows and doing that, like working as like enhancement talent before he got to be the Body Donist. I think him and Bill Apter did like before a WWF show, they had like an empty arena match as a joke that they filmed, and that was like 92, I think. So I might have just pulled that year out of the air, but I know he was before he got a contract there. He was, doing jobs and stuff, kind of like the same shit I did.
Yeah.
Just
Fair enough. Was there? I've already really asked this, but was there any real reticence to go to the WWF? Because I mean, what was he like, 5'8"? And I think
he's a little bit taller. Yeah, like 5'9"-ish. Yeah. He was like, built like a brick shit house.
Yeah. I was sort of thinking, was there any reticence? Because I know they turned down Chris Benoit that same year for probably the same reason, and they were sort of a similar build, similar height, and everything. So, I mean, was he ever worried that he wasn't going to get a fair shake?
I don't think so. I think with him, he was so freaking dedicated, had such tunnel vision. He kind of knew if you were a pro wrestler in any capacity, anywhere, he knew you. Like, he was all over the place. So it was just the next step. Like, I don't think he ever had a second thought about it. And I know from, like, I heard like Bruce Pritchard, like, so somebody's like, I don't really follow a lot of wrestling things now, just my brother's gone. I don't do it anymore. It kind of, makes me miss him and shit. But people will send me links and stuff. And it was Bruce Pritchard, talking about my brother, about going in there, just how technically sound he was. And, they wanted to keep him there like for a while to train guys. And just, just about how he was so advanced at such a young age because he had been doing it for so long that, it was like, I don't know if I've been that passionate about anything in my life the way he felt about wrestling, So, yeah, I don't think he gave it a second thought. He knew that's where he was going, and that's where he went. And he was going to, after, it's almost like the WWE is the belly of the beast. When you're in the belly of the beast, you're making 20 grand a week, and then they spit you out, and then you're trying to crawl back into the belly of the beast, because then when you're there, you get 20 grand a week, And so so I figured he was going to figure his way back into WWE. And it's just so crazy to think he passed at 33, because my little sisters, who I still look at as little sisters, are older than he was when he passed. So it's kind of crazy. But so yeah, he loved this time at WWE. He did, and he figured he'd be back there, at some point or another in his career.
Yeah, well, he sort of actually was. He was there for like one night, wasn't he, when he faced Brian Christopher? But I'll go back from that. So I think you mentioned it before, but the skip gimmick, he wasn't feeling.
No, he wasn't. I mean, and well, Dr. Tom really wasn't, because he liked to have the long hair in front of his head. I think Chris, he was happy to be there, and again, kind of saw it as like paying his dues. Because if it was 1996, he was born in 82. So he got there in 95. So he was like 23, 24. So I think he wasn't as annoyed with it as Tom Pritchard was, because I think he was like, I made it to the show. This is validation. I can now tell my parents that I'm making money doing what I love. So, but then I remember years later, they did an ECW show, which was like all the guys had to wear their old gimmicks. And he came out and did skip again in ECW. But he didn't like it. He thought it was kind of corny. But again, that was like the time of corny gimmicks. There was like Duke the Dumpster, who was like garbage man. There was the race car driver. There was like, they just did a bunch of shit back then like that. So, he might have not been his favorite, but he made the most of it,
I know Chris must have met Vince McMahon quite a few times. Did you ever meet Vince McMahon?
Oh yeah, I met him. I don't know, like 10 times. He always remembered my name. He'd always say, "Johnny, fantastic." So, yeah, he was cool.
Did Chris sort of? I don't know. Did he get a bit discouraged when he realised that he was going to be losing to Barry Horowitz straight away?
Not really. It was really hard to discourage him. I think he thought of it as, I'm young, I'm here, I'm playing the game. I think it was later on that he got like a little bit more like annoyed with things, like, you know, why am I not moving along faster? Like, let's get this show on the road kind of thing after the Body Donnas phased out. But the Barry Horowitz thing, it didn't really bother him. He never cared about doing jobs to anyone, or it never really peeved him that much. You know, he was cool with it. So, and it was funny just to see like that's when like I remember he thought it was funny. Like he would go to the mall to go shopping, and there'd be like grown men like patting themselves on the back and running away and shit. So he was just laughing about it. He wasn't, like I said, he was the kind of guy that rather laugh something off than get annoyed at it, you know.
Are we all right to talk a bit about Tammy, because we can't really talk about Chris without talking about Tammy a bit. So
yeah, of course.
I've heard that Tom Pritchard was a bit, you know, he liked Chris, but Tammy, you know, didn't get on, and then, you know, he was sort of convinced to, you know, in public be as a 3 and everything, but really, you know, he didn't really get on with Tammy that much. When did Tammy sort of get maybe a bit more difficult to deal with?
Well, dude, from the beginning, she was fucking difficult to deal with. Like, so my brother met her it was both their senior years of high school, and before he met her, he already had a date to his senior prom. He was at his senior prom, and she drove to the senior prom and made this huge scene and made him leave his date at the prom. Like they could already tell she was high drama, and she was like, dude, she was a fucking nightmare. Like when she had a couple of drinks in her, or even if she didn't, she's just one of those people that loved chaos, loved to create insanity. Just freaking, you know, if you read that professional wrestling stories, you knew the kind of shit that I was seeing. It was fucking bonkers, you know. Like I have so many fucking crazy Tammy stories, but I'd say it got, you know, progressively worse. And then when she wasn't Sunny the hot looking chick anymore, she still thought she was, which made her even more like intolerable, because now she's like this freaking, she's bitching, yelling. Yeah, she was just really tough to fucking deal with.
She's not even good to look at anymore. That saving
right?
grace.
I mean, not that I never looked at her like that. Obviously, she was like my sister-in-law, but it would be like, you know, when I, like years later when I got older, it would be like, you know, all right, bro, love you. I'll see you later. All right, Tammy, later. And then he'd be like, dude, can you just say you love Tammy too when you leave? And I'd do it for like a week, and then she'd do something fucking completely bonkers. And then I'd be hating her, but then he convinced me to be nice to her again. And it was just the whole fucking, you know, if you want me to tell you some crazy Tammy stories later or now, I can. But
well, this actually might lead into a bit, because so in English vernacular, I'd say quite a few stories, bit depressing, of course, but Tammy started in the WWF slagging her way around that locker room like nobody's business. You know, like Sean, obviously, is the famous one, Davey Boy, Pillman, apparently. Like,
yeah. And that
why?
and the fucked up thing is, my brother, he didn't fucking want to believe it. Like, when people are like, oh, Chris must have been into it. It's like, dude, I saw him trying to fucking hang himself. Like, he wasn't into it. Trust me, he fucking hated it. And when I was a lot more quicker to knock a motherfucker out than Chris was. And he's like, you're gonna come across Shawn Michaels, don't do nothing, be cool to him. This is like later on in life when I'm like in my 20s. He's like, as far as I know, they're just rumors, you know. Had I known now, because all right, I'll take you to this one. I'll tell a story that ties into that, because at the time I thought everything was just rumors. So this is when Chris was alive. Me and him would kind of get like, Tammy's out of the business, and me and him would get like booked as like a package deal. And, you know, we'd go all over together, have the fucking greatest time. And like during the week or whatever, we'd like play down our bookings. We'd be like, oh, we got to go to Boston. It's going to be the shits. Yeah, you don't want to come. But sometimes she would get like a fucking child and like lock herself in my car. So anyway, she gets herself on this trip to Boston with us. And so after the show, like behind, like backstage, there's like a bar and shit for like the boys. And we're all sitting around a table. It's like me, my brother, Balls. I forget who else was there. A couple other guys. Like they'd bring in a couple more guys. Like guys I'd see there would be like Billy Gunn, Raven, Brian Christopher. I don't remember the exact match of guys that night, but Tammy's at the bar, and all of a sudden she hauls off and fucking slaps this dude at the bar. I'm the closest one to the bar, so I grab the dude and drag him outside to put the boots to him. A couple of the guys follow me, and he's like, dude, I swear to God, it did nothing. She just slapped me out of nowhere. Then Chris is going, time to go, time to go. Tammy's puking in a fucking garbage can, and people are taking pictures on their phone. So she passes out. We pick her up. We throw her in the back of the car, close the door, whatever. That's par for the course. But I'm driving. I'm 19, 20, something like that. I've been drinking. I took a couple gimmicks. It's starting to rain. And he's like, dude, this is before he got like clean. He's like, I wish we had more somas. Like, we have like 0 somas. I'm like, fuck somas. I'm like, let's just smoke a joint to be fine. For some reason, Tammy's fine with every other drug in the book, but hates pot. Hates it. So out of her fucking stupor, she wakes up, she goes, smoke pot, you two motherfuckers. And she just started attacking us from the back seat, kicking us in the head, fucking punching the two of us. I'm in Boston. I'm fucking half drunk, driving in the fucking pouring rain. He goes back to try to like make her stop hitting us, and she fucking bites him on the face. I fucking take the next exit off. I park the car. I'm like, dude, handle this, please. I go walking away. Next thing I know, I see a cop car pulling up to my car. So I go running back to the cop car. She jumps out of the back. She goes, she's like, I woke up and these two were beating me. I go, what, you crazy bitch? And she fucking swings at me right in front of the cop. The cop's like, whoa, 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 I got to take everybody in. I'm like, listen, the hotel is like right there. I'm like, let me just take them to the hotel and you won't see us ever again. The cop's like, all right, go to the hotel. So I'm taking him to the hotel, and Chris is like, Tammy, what's wrong? Bam, she punches him. He's like, babe, what's wrong? Bam, she punches him. We get into the hotel room. He's like, babe, what's wrong? Bam, punches him. He puts her on the bed. He's like, babe, she reels back and kicks him right in the fucking face. I couldn't watch this anymore. I grabbed him and I dragged him out of the fucking room. I threw him into the hallway, shut the door behind us. He's fighting to get back in. I'm fighting him to not let him in. We kind of come to a stalemate. I'm just like, dude, let's get in the car and fucking leave her. Fuck this shit. Like, fuck her. Like, let's go. Let's go right now. And he's like, dude, he's like, I can't. I'm like, why? And he's like, I brought her into this business. I feel like I have to take care of her. I'm like, fuck that. Like, this is our chance. Like, let's get the fuck out of here. And had I known all that shit that she really did cheat on him with every fucking swinging dick there was, I could use that as fucking ammo. But he was always like, dude, it's just rumors. It's just rumors. So, I think if he really knew the scale of him cheating on her, if I had that, I would, I would have so much more ammunition to go after him with. Together to
like just a PowerPoint. These are the reasons you should leave.
Yeah, right. I mean, she gets drunk, causes scenes. That's a fucking pain. We always have like Thanksgiving, Christmas, all that shit at my parents' house, and he'd be like, "Don't get all fucked up before we go." Of course, I'd pick him up to come over here, and boom, she'd be all gimmicked up in the car. We'd be at 7-Eleven trying to give her Red Bull and shit. My mom's calling, "Where are you guys? Dinner's done." It was just a nightmare, like every fucking holiday. Ugh. Yeah. Just and like somebody, Mike Johnson from PWI was like, "Are you surprised at all by Tammy and all her arrests?" I'm like, "No." I'm like, "Not at all." I'm like, because I'm like, me and my brother, we would never call the police. We would just, I'm like, it wasn't the best coping mechanism. We would just forget that it happened the next day and wake up like everything was fine, and just not talk about it. Whereas regular people would just call the cops and they see somebody drunk attacking people, where me and him would just go on with our lives, But I guess there's something to be said that he really fucking loved her, and he, they met when they were 17. But like I said, had I known all that shit, I would have fucking had so much more ammo to go after him with,
Yeah, something to break the hypnosis, the spell.
Yeah, for real.
Yeah.
To be like, look what's happening, dickhead.
Yeah. All right, I'll ask one more sort of like depressing question, then we'll move straight on to not quite ECW, but we'll move on. So I didn't actually realise. I did flip through the book, but I was doing more research from the Pro Wrestling Stories interview, was like really in depth, and I didn't realise like Chris was into the Somas thing and all that kind of thing. Was that more indicative of being with Tammy or depression, or was it the wrestling business that got you in, or got him in?
It was so it was very popular with wrestlers, but he did use it for pain, but he used it a lot to block out all the shit. Like when you take somas, you know, you're supposed to take like 1 or 2, like me or him take like 8 to 10, and then you eat something like 5 minutes after and it kicks in. It's like you're fucking insta drunk, and then you fucking, you know, pass out and have wacky dreams and shit. And his taking somas, I mean, we'd go pick up somas. This is when I'm older. Like we'd go to this pharmacy, and we knew a couple of corrupt pharmacists, and we'd go like every 3 days or every other day to get 120, and they'd be gone that fast. You know, it was but he was using them more to block out bad shit and to just not have to deal with life, as opposed to like anything else. And then when he finally, you know, he realized he had done some dumb shit when he was all fucking somaed up, and we had this fucking long talk, and you know, that's when he didn't have an addictive personality when it came to drugs. When we had that conversation, and he realized, you know, I've told it before, but like when he came, it was like late 2004. We'd come back from Puerto Rico, and me and him were out to dinner, or you know, or is it like mid 2004? And he's like, man, when I was 18, I was all fucking jacked up. I was already in Smoky Mountain. These guys on the indies, you know, they have no bodies, or they're big, or they're fat, or whatever. I'm like, dude, that's why you were a fucking standout, numbnuts. I'm like, you fucking, you know, like you made it because of your dedication and all this stuff. I'm like, you and he's like, man, I fucked everything up. I'm like, no, you didn't. I'm like, you're still young. You're like 30. Like, let's get this shit together. You know, no more like that. From that dinner, we went to the Woodbridge Mall, and we got all new like polo shirts and shit. We're like, time to roll up to the building looking fly. No more rolling up late in fucking pajama pants and tank tops. Like, you know, let's go looking fresh. And it was like from that point on, when he stopped the drugs, that his career like overnight was like boom, back to the top. You know,
so he wasn't like chemically dependent. He was just like, I'm done.
Well, no, he was. I mean, when he was, you get physically addicted to them.
Yeah.
He would have seizures if he didn't have somas for more than, let's say, if he went like between like 18 to 20 hours without somas, he would have a fucking seizure. And some of the scariest shit I've ever seen. I mean, like there's once he had a seizure in fucking Times Square, and then we had a show at Hammerstein Ballroom that night. I was in the hospital room with him. When he came to, we just ripped all the fucking cords out of him and shit. But the scariest one ever, we were at one of these pharmacies, and we were just waiting, and all of a sudden he just goes, oh no, fucking has a seizure, bites his tongue, fucking blood spewing all over the fucking place. It's hitting me, hitting him. And so I remember, you know, we got into the fucking ambulance, and it just, that one just stuck with me, because when he'd have a seizure, I'd like get on top of him, and I'd say, I'm like, dude, because his pupils would like dilate. I'm like, fixate on me. I'm like, you'll be fine. I'd kind of like have to talk him through it. And you know, that one I just remember was so bad because he bit his tongue like right in the middle, and blood was just shooting out like a fountain on me. So that was fucked up. And I saw a lot of more fucked up shit like that. But yeah, it's a central nervous system depressant. So if you don't have it, it's almost like if an alcoholic just stops drinking cold turkey, they'll have a seizure. It's like that. So he had to like wean himself off it, and then he went and got seizure medication and all kind of other shit. So when he stopped taking somas. But he was dependent because he took them for so fucking long.
But I mean, you know, it's a credit to him, obviously, to, you know, be that dependent, get that far down the hole, and then just make the decision to stop it and do it the right way. So
yeah, it was.
Right, so I'm going to nip into ECW. Sorry, we got a bit more time, haven't we? Or have we? Or are you about done?
No, I'm cool.
Oh, that's good, because I'm only halfway through the questions.
Yeah, guys. Sorry if I go off on tangents.
Oh, no, dude, don't worry.
Sometimes
Seriously,
one story runs into another one.
No, that's fine. So my first question with ECW, because you were basically all the shows, more or less, was it just pure insanity backstage? Or is it just a bit sort of over, you know what I mean?
It's insanity, but it's like almost like controlled chaos. And everybody back there was like, it was like a big, insane fucking family, you know. It was really cool. Like, and then like the first time I was ever on TV wrestling, or on a TV on a wrestling show, I was like 15, 14, and so there was the ECW arena the locker room, which was like huge, and then there were stairs up to the Eagles Nest where everybody would watch, and then there was a wrestling ring backstage. So me and my buddies, this was like 8th grade freshman year, we had like a backyard wrestling federation, and we'd bring our fucking gear bags to the ECW arena to take like fucking promo pics in the ring with our gear and shit. And the Blue World Order, that was Blue Meanie, Stevie Richards, and Nova. Yeah. And that the first night they decided to be those guys, or they're like, what does Diesel wear? We're like, I think he wears like black fingerless gloves. They're like, oh shit, you guys have that in your bag? We're like, yep. And he's like, we're like, oh yeah, you're gonna need sunglasses, take that. So we're like dressing all the fucking BWO guys up in our fucking backyard wrestling little bags that we all brought. And then they're like, you guys need to come out to the ring with us and carry these signs. It was like me, my cousin Vinny, my friend Ricky. There was a whole bunch of us. And so we got these BWO signs, and they come out to the ring, and we're coming through the crowd with the BWO signs. And I go to step over, I go to like hop the rail, but I'm kind of like a fat kid, and I fall right on TV. I get up, I hold my sign, and the fucking crowd saw me fall, and they were like, oh. So I ran around with the sign, came back, and everybody in the locker room, I saw Louis Piccoli and my brother first. They're like, oh shit, you took your first bump on TV, yay. I was fucking mortified. I'm like, no, some guy grabbed my leg and tripped me. But yeah, they took me all over with them. And then even when they went to Florida, my brother's like, dude, it's not going to be the same without you. You got to come to Florida. So, we were, a whole bunch of us were all out in Florida. And I remember this night, my brother tells it as the night that I was kidnapped by Tracy Smothers and Tommy Rich. So like, Tracy's on one side of me, Tommy Rich is on the other. Across from me is my brother, Tammy. Jericho's there saying hello to someone. He's got his chick with him. The Dudleys, New Jack, Dreamer. The entire floor is all like, it's just all wrestlers. So, long story short, I'm between Tommy Rich and Tracy Smothers. We're hanging out. Me and Tracy are slap boxing. I had like a Coca-Cola. Well, Tommy Rich is like, hey, bring me and my son a beer. And the lady's like, sir, he's not of age. He's like, all right, just bring me 2. And then he's like, bring me a shot of Jack Daniels. And he took a shot of Jack Daniels and poured it in my Coke. I was drinking it. And then Tammy took some somas. And as soon as she fucking ate some sushi, thonk, she fell face first in her food. And then so fucking my brother, New Jack, and the Dudleys all carried her out to the car. They got in the car. My brother's like, dude, let's go back to the hotel. And Tracy and Tommy are like, I'll stay with us. I'm like, all right, I'm gonna stay hanging with these guys. So I stayed and partied with Tracy and Tommy. My brother thought we were in the car on the way, like following them. But that night, I guess I got a little drunk. I remember walking amongst like a sea of big people. And then I remember when I came back, my brother told me that he was like going to people's rooms looking for me and shit. And then he looked out the window and he saw me in the pool swimming around. And there was like a couple other guys chilling in the pool at like 3 a.m. And he's like, so he used to always tell a story how Tommy Rich and Tracy's mother's kidnapped me. But the ECW was a fucking fun adventure, man. Like they'd always have like little shit for me to do. They'd be like, Johnny, New Jack's looking for you. And he'd be like, hey, can I boost you up into that dumpster and see what kind of weapons you could find? I'm like, yeah, sure. I'm like, I found a hose and the top to a grill. I would just like find New Jack weapons but it was real fun, man. It was cool.
Did you ever see any like proper like backstage fights? Because there's so many documented, like a couple off the top of my head, Shane Douglas and Sandman, that was like a big one. New Jack versus anybody. Balls Mahoney versus anyone who said it was briquettes instead of coal.
I've seen heated back and forths. I'm trying to think because I've been in a lot of fucking locker rooms, so it's hard to really pin down if I remember any of the backstage fights. Not off the top of my head. I remember New Jack almost getting into a fight with someone, but again, like, I can't really think of, other than the ECW guys beating the shit out of the guys in the street. I don't remember any of the guys fighting amongst each other. As I've seen arguments and shit, but I don't remember a lot. Like, again, most of the time I was up watching the matches or doing whatever. So,
who were like the most vocal people who were like arguing about? Let's assume matches. Was it Taz?
Well, Taz was like super serious about shit. Sabu was not vocal. He was he just kind of does his thing. We were boys now. We fucking talk all the time. But Tommy Rich was always seemed to be vocal. Tracy Smothers, Jack, New Jack, Balls, of course, was a freaking psycho about everything. You know, it was definitely a cast of characters, man. So, you know, it was it was so funny. I was on Joel Gertner's podcast, and I I remember being out in Florida for one of their shows, and the whole tour wraps up or whatever, and I'm standing. We're getting ready to take the tram from the hotel to the airport, and I'm standing there, and John Cronus is staring at me, and he's like eating something. He's like, "How come you got anal beads on your neck?" Like, how come I have what? Anal beads? He's like, those things on your neck, are they anal beads? I'm like, what the hell is an anal bead? He's like, they're beads that people put in their butt and pull them out. Like, why would anybody put beads in their butt and pull them out? He's like, I don't know. I'm like, no, these aren't anal beads. They're just regular beads. And then I remember telling my brother, I'm like, hey, you ever heard of anal beads? He's like, who the fuck's telling you about anal beads? I'm like, I don't know. I heard it at school. It was just funny. It was just a cast of characters, man.
Dude, well, speaking of a cast of characters, I mean, there's like all these absolute maniacs, larger than life type of people, and then there's Lance Storm, who your kid. Yeah. Well, I'm saying your kid. That means your brother. Your kid was feuding with and teaming with basically at the same time. Did he like properly get along? Because obviously they're both like crazy wrestling fans, are really good in the ring.
No, they definitely got along great, and I think it was so. When it came to in-ring wrestling, there's nothing that Chris loved more. Like, he loved everything, and Lance was the same way. So yeah, they got along great. There was, I mean, they pretended to hate each other for that angle, but as far as personally, they got along great. I still talk to Lance now. He did a tribute podcast to Chris. He did a couple of them, and just telling all funny stories about the two of them. So he was in Smoky Mountain too when Chris was there. So they'd known each other forever. But yeah, they got along, even though, Lance wasn't the most outspoken guy. Just when it came to in the ring, that's all Chris really cared about, Yeah. So yeah, they got along great.
Did anyone ever succeed in getting Lance Storm into any kind of caper?
Not that I could think of. No, nothing. Not that I can really think of. He seemed to just be like wrestling and then chill,
Dude, everyone's got a drunken Sandman story. What's yours?
Oh, dude, I have tons of them. Jesus Christ. I don't even... All right, drunken Sandman story. So after Chris's... So like my two best friends in the wrestling business are Sandman and Sabu. And after my brother's wake, then we had the repast at this restaurant, and there was, full of people. And then like 15 of my best friends and my sisters and Sandman and Sabu came back to my house to like have beers in the backyard. Like, we always have parties at my house. And then I have a friend who owns a hotel in town. So Sandman and Sabu stayed for like the next couple days. Sabu stayed for like 2 days. Sandman stayed for like 4. So let's say like day 3, we go to this place, Bar A. It's this huge fucking bar. We're drinking like crazy. We bring like half the bar back to our hotel, and we have like adjoining rooms. And I hear like all this screaming and all this like, what the fuck going on? And Sandman's naked in the room, wasted, with a cigarette dangling out of his mouth, with his pants at his ankles. And I'm like, dude, what are you doing? Put your pants on. He's like, move. I'm like, you put your fucking pants on? He's like, why are you doing this to me? I'm like, because you're fucking naked, bro. And then at the time I was a rapper. I'm like, let's rap. I'll rap if you pull your pants back up. He's like, all right, fine. And he pulled his pants up. And then later on, we got wasted. And he's like, let me see if you guys can this is the same night. He goes, check this out. And he ran and he jumped over the hood of a car. And so then, my friend's like, oh, dude, we could do that shit. And Spring Lake's like kind of like an affluent town. There's like Mercedes, fucking, like Bentleys and BMWs and shit. And we're fucking trying to jump over the hood of the car. And it's like catching the heel of our foot. We're fucking falling, stumbling, knocking into cars, knocking their fucking mirrors off. But Sandman was good. He could jump right the fuck over the hood of a car. But yeah, I have a lot of funny stories about Sandman because I would go visit him all the time. Like just drive up to his house, take the I have to go see him. I haven't been to his house in like a year or two, but we still talk a lot. So yeah, I have a lot of drunken Sandman stories.
Have you got a specific story with Sandman and New Jack? Because they were sort of partners in crime for a while, I believe.
Not the two of them together. Again, like later on when I got to know him, then I got to know, them more like as an adult as opposed to me being like 15. So not really them together, but later on, I definitely had some funny stories. Like when Balls and New Jack had their beef, I was like mediating it, and it's such a ridiculous story. I don't even know if I could even begin to start telling it. Like, so have you heard that Balls and New Jack had a beef, or no?
I don't think so. No.
All right. Well, you can check it out on they did a gimmick on RF Video called Face Off or whatever, but they had legit beef. So New Jack had a point, which Balls did the same thing to me. Balls is like, says to New Jack, he's like, I'm gonna cut a promo and I'm gonna drop the M-bomb. Do you care? Jack's like, yeah, I fucking care. Don't do that. And he's like, but do you really care? Like if I do it? He's like, yeah, dude, don't fucking do that. And Balls went and did it. So that's A. B is where shit starts getting weird. So I go to Balls' house. New Jack publicly fucking said, so this is what happened. This is all right. So Balls' story is this. He goes, oh, New Jack's saying all this shit. He's like, I met this girl named Teresa, and her husband is in a wheelchair. And I'm just calling her Teresa. He's like, I met Teresa after the show. After the show, she's a masseuse. So she said she'd give me a massage. So I went up in the hotel room and she gave me a massage. And then her husband wheeled over in a wheelchair and said, that's enough. Poof, and punched her in the face. And Balls is like, no, that's not cool. That's not cool. So I pushed him out of the hotel room and closed the door. So again, he's like, then I see him the next night. Now we're friends. He's like, I'm back in their room. She's giving me a massage. The guy comes over again, goes, that's enough. But he procures a bat from somewhere in his wheelchair and clocks the girl in the head with the bat. So Balls is like, now I'm pissed. So Balls runs the guy in the wheelchair, out of the hotel room, pushes him out of the wheelchair. So then I hear from New Jack. I'm like, what happened with some guy in a wheelchair or something? He's like, yeah, that dude. He's like, Balls threw him out of the fucking room, and they was in there doing some devil worshiping shit, cutting on each other, drinking each other blood. And he said that he has Hep C, and he gave it to the girl, and Balls is doing that, and it's getting all the boys. He's putting the guys in danger from doing that fucking shit. So that was the beef mediation. So I heard both sides of their story, and I think they eventually squashed it. But just hearing the two sides, like a guy in a wheelchair hit a girl in the head with a bat, and then Balls do like, it was just the stories here in wrestling are so it's so hard to even tell.
That's a lot to take in for.
I'm telling you. And then you hear Balls tell it, and Balls tells it so convincingly. He's like, he ran over, and that's not cool. And he hit it with the bat, so I threw him out of the wheelchair. And then New Jack's like, they were in there. He threw him out the room because they were cutting on each other and doing like devil worship and sex and shit. So it's just only in wrestling is a story like that.
Dude,
but he's the same.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was gonna say he did something similar to me. Like I was up in WWE, did a dark match with Balls, and then Axel wasn't working there anymore. And this is after Chris died. Balls is like, he's like, me and you, I already talked to Shane, I talked to Laurinaitis, me and you were gonna be a tag team, blah 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 blah. At the same time, my parents don't know I'm wrestling. And they're like, Johnny, if you keep doing this, we can't go through this again. So fast forward, after WWE, I came back to do an angle with him on the Indies. He's like, I'm gonna get on the microphone. I'm gonna say, your brother's rolling over in his grave because you stopped wrestling and you're a fucking piece of shit. He like said all this shit about my brother. I'm like, dude, don't fucking say that. Like, what the fuck? And he's like, I'm gonna say it. And he fucking said it in the ring, and I fucking punched him in the face, and it was a whole fucking thing. So he did that. Like
I like how he do it and then go, what?
Yeah. Like, he's like, I told you I was gonna do it. I'm like, yeah, I told. And like the way New Jack, he's like, I said if you do that shit, there's gonna be consequences and repercussions, and he did it. So fuck him. And I know that he does that because he did it to me too, you know? So
back to your brother, actually, and why did he leave ECW in the first place? Because was it a Tammy thing, the pair of them getting a bit out of control? Was that just basically it, and then he left?
it was that, and also guys were like jumping ship to go to WCW, and again, I was young, and later on, like I said, we would talk about wrestling all the time, but never really about like, I wouldn't be like, hey bro, whatever happened with ECW, like it just wasn't like a thing that would come up. But I know it was a lot like so yes, that like they were getting out of control with like drugs and shit like that. And he also went to WCW, and then he also was doing shit like he would book all the boys like airfare and hotel rooms on his card, and Paulie would pay him back, and then he did it and Paulie stopped paying him, and then it was like this big clusterfuck, you know. So again, I don't know the whole story. That's what I've heard from him. So that's as much as I know, because again, I was still like a teenager around that time.
Yeah. Did you end up going to like WCW locker rooms? Probably not as much as ECW because of, it's all over the country and everything. But do you ever visit him in WCW?
I don't think so. No, to be honest, I don't think I did. And I mean, I remember that time period, but yeah, he wasn't the best in that time period. I mean, his work was fine, but I remember that's when shit kind of got like dark a little bit, you know?
Yeah. The next question was going to be about WCW. I've only got 2 or 3, I think, and one of them was this WCW run just one giant waste of time? Because they didn't really do anything with him. They had him with Prince Iakea or something, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't call it a waste of time because he had to make money, so he was making good money there. I mean, if he wasn't working there, what would he be doing? You know?
I suppose career trajectory wise, it didn't do much.
Yeah, no, it didn't. It really wasn't the best career trajectory, but at the time, considering what was going on in hindsight, he was getting great pay. He was getting paid a ton there, and even after the company folded, he was still under contract, so he was still getting paid to fucking sit home for like a year after or some shit. So, so career money wise, it made sense, but career wise, it probably, he could have been off doing other things, And again, I attribute a lot of it to him being so young and, all these things that are going on. He's in his like, mid to late 20s, so it's as a kid, he's like like I said, like the wiser older brother that knows everything. When I think back, and I'm like, shit, he was only 28, whatever, when all this shit was going on. It kind of puts it in better perspective now that I'm older.
Yeah, I don't suppose you'd know if he had any like issues with Vince Russo, not giving him the push he probably felt he deserved or anything like that, or maybe even you if you spoke to him about it.
There was something about he tore his bicep, and or it was he broke something. He had a cast on, and I think it was Bischoff actually who was like, are you going to be able to make the show or something? And he's like, I have a cast on. He's like, oh, okay, but can you make the show? And he ended up cutting his cast off and like re-injuring himself. Pretty much like the guy. He didn't tell him to do that, but he kind of like wink, wink, told him to do it. You know what I mean? So that, again, it was just a lot of shit. And around the time, he wasn't the most clear-headed. Like years later, before he passed, he would like be like more introspective and be like, man, I wish I would have done this different or this different, So it is what it is.
It is what it is. So did he end up leaving because of the injury then? Because I've heard an interview with Tammy where she attributed their leaving WCW so quickly something to do with an issue with Kimberly or something.
Yeah, with the New Bane and the fucking New Bane was like a injectable
under the tongue
painkiller. What's that?
It was. I remember Perry Saturn saying at one point he used to inject it under his tongue so he didn't get like track marks or something crazy like that.
Yeah. A lot of the guys were using it, and surprisingly, that wasn't her New Bane; it was somebody else's, and they put the heat on them because they knew that. At least I knew my brother was doing it. I'm not sure to what extent Tammy was doing it, but they kind of got the heat put on them for the new Bane, and it turned out it wasn't even their new Bane. Somebody else fessed up to it later, like down the line. But yeah, I think that was part of it.
Yep. Are we okay to talk about a little about TNA and obviously basically about the accident and the injury and everything? Are we okay to talk about that?
Dude, I'm cool to talk about anything.
Yeah, okay. Because I always like to ask these things because I just, to be honest, I don't want to hurt anyone's feelings or just upset them or anything. It's more of a bit of an upbeat deal. But
my feelings don't get upset.
Yeah, all right, fair enough then. I suppose the big question, because obviously, I'll sort of fill this bit in, is he kicks the drugs, gets back in shape, really enjoying wrestling again. I think he joins TNA, was it 2004 or 2005? I know he was in 2005 at the end, but, having a really good time. AJ Styles he was facing, something like that. Then he gets in the ring. Was it a tag match? And Sonny Siaki is on the other side.
Yeah, yep.
Yeah, so the injury... well, I'll ask this probably straight out. Do you harbour any ill will to Sonny Siaki? Because obviously it was an accident, but
not at all. Not at all, man. And he was at the funeral, and he felt so bad. And like me and my little sisters, both my sisters and I were both hugging him. We're like, dude, it was an accident. Don't worry about it. Because you could tell he was kind of beating himself up over it. We're like, dude, shit like this happens. Like, don't worry about it. And it was so crazy because it was a freak accident. And then after it happened, he was in the hospital, and I talked to him in the hospital, and he's like, dude, I'm fine. And as you saw, he was on TV again. He filmed TV that whole week after he got the surgery, was fine. Then even when he came back home, his spirits were fine. And I'm like, our last conversation was like, I'm like, yo, what are you doing? He's like, oh, I'm just chilling, probably gonna take a nap. You can come over if you want. I'm like, oh, I'll just get some sleep, and then I'll hit you up later. And then I think I was at the beach or something, and then somebody called me and we're like, Cook's in the hospital. And I remember driving up, and I see my mom coming back, walking on the boardwalk, and I'm like, Mom, Cook's in the hospital. And so I ran up there first, and I remember I got into the room, and he was like, I guess like just dead, and I was like trying to wake him up because I had woken him up from the seizures and shit. And yeah, and then after he was dead, it was tough, man, obviously. And then I walked around, and then there was a little church. I went and said a couple of prayers, and I sat in my car, and I remember seeing my mom and my sisters pull up to the emergency room and run in there. And then I saw them all come running out, screaming and crying. And I'm like, oh, Jesus Christ. And then I got out of the car and went and saw him. It was so fucking tough. And then after that, it was like a blur, because then like the whole like wrestling world like converged on Spring Lake, it was beautiful to see like everybody out showing respect for my brother and everything he did. And it was definitely a good send off. But yeah, that whole time was tough because it's like he was fine. Next thing you know, he's gone. So
I will bring this up actually because I don't think people really realised for like a decade, because everyone thought the cause of his death was a blood clot, but it wasn't, according to an interview you gave a few years ago.
Yeah, so it was almost like people thought like Tammy said one thing and I said the other. The autopsy said acute pneumonia. That's what it was. Maybe could he have gotten a blood clot and that caused whatever to happen? There's a couple other things that transpired. But like, so to break it down, when he got back home, Tammy said, like, you need some sleep here. Take some. He wasn't supposed to take anything. She gave him something to fall asleep, and that made his breathing slow down. And she called an ambulance way too fucking late, pretty much. And so when the autopsy got done, it was acute pneumonia. Could there have been a blood clot? I suppose, but I'm just going off what the autopsy says. I'm not saying that there wasn't, but I just know what it said in black and white,
How did TNA support you afterwards, or support the family, or did they support you?
I mean, they were cool. Like I went out there to do that for his tag, thing. They did like a tag tournament for him, and I did a run in, and then they did like a memorial show for him, and they put up clips and stuff. I mean, what can you really do, Like,
well, I believe. Well, Tammy said that they sent her a ham.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, to be quite honest, my and Chris's family, we're comfortable financially, and I guess she's not. So she would be like, oh, she would like ask people for money, and we're obviously my family aren't huge fans of hers. So like we just went down to the funeral home and just cut a check for everything, and then she would go to shows and be like, oh, we need money for the family, and people would ask me, I'm like, dude, we don't need money. Like, don't let her play that card because we're fine. So, if I'm sure she needed money for whatever the fuck, bills or whatever. But, so yes, around that time, like when he passed, I was still wrestling. I like went that weekend and kept working. I felt like that's what my brother would have wanted. And like, I felt like this allegiance to like, make sure to like babysit Tammy and like make sure she doesn't get arrested. And then we had like, she like had a freak out in like 2007. And I'm just like, what am I still doing here? Like, I don't have to, my brother's not here. Fuck this. And I literally left the building, and that was it.
You actually brought it up just briefly, but TNA Unbreakable. I don't know if it was storyline or if it was real, but apparently Sean Waltman no-showed, and then you end up taking his place on the pay-per-view. Was that actually he no-showed, or they just threw him under the bus?
No, he no-showed, and this is such a no-no, but I was so fucked up at the time on my own shit. But I had like 2 identical bags, and they're like, you're gonna work tonight. I'm like, all right. And I had 2 fucking blue bags, and one had clothes and one had my gear, and I didn't even look, and I grabbed one, and it was fucking clothes. And I got there, and they're like, all right, well, you'll just do a run in. And it could have been so much fucking better, and Shane was just like, dude, you should have done the fucking diving headbutt, you should have done this, you should have done that. But yeah, I mean, in hindsight, I was fucked up at that time, and that whole period is still like a blur, because as you'll see, like my brother was my fucking best friend, so losing him was just like, it did fucking crush me. So,
I suppose,
but yeah, that was the deal.
I suppose this question doesn't really particularly matter, but was there any thought given to you winning the tag titles in honor?
Not that I know of. I don't know. Like I said, after my brother passed, I was wrestling, but like again, I was getting like pressure from my family to not. So kind of had like 1 foot in, 1 foot out. Like when I was there, I was all about it. But then because it's like I took a lot of comfort in seeing all the guys that I was friends with and everything. But then also going back to a locker room and like not seeing my brother was like such a bummer, So mixed emotions. Like I think anybody who wrestles and then stops is gonna miss it. Like I've stopped, and then I came back to do like a memorial show and a couple other things. Then I stopped, then I came back. It's like kind of like it's tough because you don't get that feeling anywhere else. But it's like at the same time, I'm like, looking for somebody who's not there really. I'm like almost like expecting to like walk into the locker room and see him,
Yeah, I know you go to, it's WWE, but it's WWE ECW, and it's Balls Mahoney who, when he's in there, recommends you to come in, and you end up doing quite a few, it wasn't all jobs, was it? Or was it all losing on losing?
Yeah, dark
was
match.
Was it all to Balls, or?
Yeah. Well, I did a tag match with me and Damian Adams versus Balls and Axel. And after that, Axel, due to his problems or whatever he was going through at the time, wasn't going to work there. And Balls was like, dude, like I was saying, he was like, dude, me and you fucking, we could tag, we tagged on the indies together for a bunch of different places. He's like, let's fucking do this shit. I mean, Axel was a lot better worker than me, but physically I could do more, and I was younger, and it did make sense. But on the other hand, my family, I was lying to them. I was telling them I wasn't wrestling. So if I like all of a sudden popped up on TV, like, like what the fuck? So it was like, it was really tough, like what to do at that time. So
I believe, is this the time when you actually meet Shawn Michaels as well, face to face?
Yeah. Like I was sitting down. It was either before or after a match, and I was talking to Jericho, who's like, he was like standing in a doorway. I'm sitting down, like taking my pads and shit off. And Shawn Michaels sits next to me. We give each other a little like wrestling handshake. And Jericho's like, it's Candido's brother. And he's like, hey, bro. I'm like, hey, what's up, man? And he's like, your brother was such a really great talent. You know, he's like, sometimes in this business, you have to be out for yourself and be selfish. I'm like, all right, thanks for that. You know, I wish I had a more exciting story. That's what he said, you know.
No, but did it sort of like think, you know, all those years, God, if I find him face to face, and then when it actually happens, you don't, I don't know if you like freeze or you sort of just think,
no,
it's not really worth it.
This was like before, it was before a match. If I would have fucking just started kicking the shit out of him, everybody would have just kicked the shit out of me. I mean, I had some allies, but I would have got my ass kicked. I don't care about that part. But then Balls wouldn't have had his match, and Axel wouldn't have, and I would have fucked shit up for them. And I mean, at the time, it was right when I walked into the building and said my hellos and was sitting down is when Shawn Michaels sat next to me. So if I had started shit then, we were the very first match on. So if I had started shit then, it would have felt good to me to fucking get some fucking, to like knock him out or whatever. But then it would have fucked everything up for everybody else. So at the time, my head was more focused on the match at hand. And my brother telling me, because my brother died in 05. This was in either late 05 or early 06. So my brother telling me, when you see him, don't do nothing, just be cool. So I just did what he told me to do, you know?
Right, okay. I've got probably sort of an ending to all this. Like, I've got like a big finale where I ask you like a bunch of rapid fire questions. But just before I do, I've sort of come up with this weird philosophical question that you'll probably be able to answer. And it is, does the nature of the wrestling business fundamentally change you as a person? From when you get in to when you leave, do you feel that you'd be the same person if you had a regular job doing whatever else?
I think it does change you as a person because you get to feel what it's like. Like for me, the best time was when you hit something really awesome and you pull something off great, and you know, just that boom and that pop from the crowd that really does something to you. And then after the match in the locker room, like after you've had a really good, successful match, you're just on like this great high. And I think, you know, that does change people because you want to chase that. You know, it's, you know, that's why you see people leave and come back because it's like something you can't really replicate, you know?
Yeah.
So yeah, it does change you for sure.
All right. So I'm going to, sorry to sort of spring that one on you. I just decided to ask it.
No
right,
problem.
so my sort of like final gambit, I call it the firing line. So I'm going to fire a load of names at you. And for this one, all ECW names, because you spent so much time in ECW even in front of the camera a couple of times as well. So I'm going to throw some names at you. You tell me if they're cool, if they're not cool, maybe a funny story, if you can think of anything in. And the first one's Raven.
Raven. Cool, smart guy. I could see how certain people could think he's a little bit, he has like a sarcastic kind of sense of humor, but cool. Yeah, I get along with Raven.
Al Snow.
Oh, dude, super cool. And fucking my brother and Al Snow, man, the two of them, I'd see him in Massachusetts all the time. Him and my brother would be the main event, and they would go an hour plus every fucking time. And they would just do shit. I remember, like, let's say, you know, boom, boom, they're wrestling. Al Snow's in the corner. Boom, boom. Here's my brother with sweet chin music. 1, 2, kick out. My brother, boom, gives him a pedigree. Boom. Then does the fucking people's elbow. Boom. Then, you know, my brother would miss a fucking swanton. You know, Al Snow would fucking like do a Hulk Hogan, Hulk up and point at him. And, like, they would do that shit. And the people would go fucking wild. Like, some of the best matches ever were my brother and Al Snow. And just one that I remember, they were doing this shit. The place was going crazy. I'm backstage with Balls. We're watching. And he's like, JC, let's get involved. I'm like, all right. So, because they were just having so much fun. Like, we couldn't fucking even contain ourselves. So John goes bolting out there, and he starts putting the boots to fucking Al Snow. And I'm like, all right. So I chase Balls out there, and I grab Balls, and then Al Snow pulls me off, and he's like, stop fighting with Balls Mahoney. You're taking the crowd away from us, fucker. And I'm like, shit, sorry. And I fucking took a powder. I was actually outside the ring. He was clobbering me. And I think my brother did the same thing to John. And both of us kind of made our way back to the locker room. But me and Al joked about that after. But Yeah, I thought Al Snow's fucking awesome, man.
Next one, Bill Alfonso, Daddy.
Oh, dude, Bill Alfonso's hilarious. Again, awesome guy, tells fucking great stories. And that's his personality. He's always like fired up, like, ready to go. He's the guy that'll have a drink with you at the airport at 9 a.m. He's just like cool as shit,
Francine.
Francine's freaking awesome. Me and her talk a lot, like recently, especially on Twitter. I did her podcast and we did like a similar like Twitch gimmick. Yeah, she's like super cool. I've known her for a long time. We've worked together. Like she's managed opposite me before, and yeah, she's really cool.
Hat guy, the guy who sat in the front row.
Oh, the hat guy. Yeah, dude, he was like, I think my brother told me he was like one of the guys who started his fan club. I met the hat guy. There was the hat guy, then there was the guy with the long hair, the glasses.
Faith No More guy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know whatever happened to Hat Guy, but he was definitely like at every fucking ECW, at least the arena shows. Again, I was younger, but I definitely remember Hat Guy, and I think we used to call the guy with the glasses and the long hair Diesel. Me and my buddies.
Dude, he's probably going to turn up on WWE Network because they're doing a thing about Vladimir. Like the sort of like mixed race dude, the like tall, thin guy with the big Coke bottle glasses in the WWF.
Yeah.
They've done a documentary on him, no less, or like they're honoring him or something like that. It's crazy.
Oh shit, yeah, Hat Guy's definitely got to be in there. Yeah. He's one of the most like iconic fans.
Dude, Big Dick Dudley.
Tough son of a bitch, from what I hear. Also super cool, a mountain of a guy. Like you saw him and you were like, holy shit. Like he was big, arms like freaking like 30-inch around, just a hulking dude, and just like a legit badass.
Yeah, this one I thought to mention because when I saw you wrestling, because I watched a couple of clips of you wrestle, you reminded me of him, Louis Spicolli, because you had the sort of hair going back and everything. I thought, a slight resemblance there, if nothing else.
Louis Spicolli is so awesome. Actually, I linked up with his brother-in-law, and we've been talking. Louis was so cool. Like I remember driving to shows with him, and the Freebirds, the song "Freebird" by Leonard Skinner came on. And him and my brother did the whole fucking dance. Louis Spicolli was always high energy, always having fun, always positive. Like he was great, man. He was a funny guy and a great talent, and another guy who's sorely missed, who's fucking awesome.
Mikey Whipwreck.
Fucking awesome dude. I talk to Mikey all the time still. He's super talented guy, and again I don't really have anything bad to say about anyone. I mean, Mikey's really cool. Like I still talk to a lot of the ECW guys like weekly, so Mikey I talk to all the time. He's cool as shit.
I don't pick these people for the most part to think like, oh, this guy's really going to hate him. I'm after like the weird stories that people might not think. But here's one. Then.
Yeah.
Chastity.
That's that chick that was with Jason Knight.
I think so. Give me 1 minute. I'll find a photo. Hang on. Put my phone on the floor. I forgot to put it on.
If it's the chick, I think it is.
Hang on. Chastity. ECW. Oh, come on. Yo, it is the one with the blonde hair. Sorry, I was thinking of someone else.
Yeah, I was gonna say between me and you, but I guess more people are gonna hear this. Her and my brother like fooled around. I think that was one of the things that if I would say anything, he's like, I'm not perfect too. I fucking fucked around with Chastity. So I don't know if I'm like, if people knew that or not, but yeah, I know my brother hooked up with her in those days.
I suppose what's good for the goose is good for the gander, I suppose. We've already mentioned Too Cold Scorpio, so I'll skip him. Tracy Smothers, you've already mentioned him a bit, but you've got to give him some more.
So many freaking, dude, man, he would freaking, his stories were freaking epic. And he would smoke weed, but he would always smoke it in his underwear because he didn't want his old lady smelling it on him. But he'd be like, man, I Oh, he was always like 1,000 miles an hour. Like, hey man, I was just in Branson, Missouri, man. Biker bars, man. Biker bars. Wrestling in biker bars. That's right, brother. And he would constantly high five, telling stories, shadow boxing. You know, he was fucking epic, man. I love that dude. And he's like legit, like from the mountains. Like he would like, but this is a story my brother told me that he would like, they'd be driving to a show and he'd see like a stream going down a mountain, and he would just like take his water bottle and fill it up with mountain water. And he's like, yeah, if it passes through a rock 8 times, it's purified, and just like drink it. But he could handle that shit because he's like a country guy, and you know, would probably make my brother sick. But Tracy was like, and I heard he came up doing these like these like farmer brawls, like who had like the most badass farmer, and he like whooped everybody's ass. So that's like, but dude, Tracy was the fucking man.
Dude, my actual finale was New Jack. We've already done New Jack, so I'll give you 2 more, and then we'll cut it off because I've taken up too much of your time already. So I'll say Nova.
Nova, he's a freaking class act. And dude, me and him, when I was a kid, we had a Mortal Kombat feud going. On the big arcade games, we play freaking Mortal Kombat.
Which one specifically? 1, 2, 3, or trilogy?
I was the Scorpion that threw the fucking gimmicks. Like, get over here, and then hit the guy with the uppercut. Well, whatever was out in that fucking year, I forget. There was Scorpion, Sub-Zero, Chun-Li that did the kicks.
No, that was Street Fighter Chun-Li, I think. Spinning bird kick.
What
that
was it?
Yeah, that was Chun-Li was Street Fighter.
All right, then Sub-Zero and Scorpion. Is that Mortal Kombat?
Yeah.
So me and him had a Mortal Kombat feud. He was cool as shit. I'm sure he still is. He has a twin brother that ran shows in Jersey. I can't think of any real crazy stories other than playing them fucking video games when I was a kid. But yeah, awesome dude, man.
Dude, I'm going to take a total punt on this because I'm not sure you may have met her, you may not have, Missy Hyatt.
Oh, dude, yeah, I met Missy Hyatt. Pretty freaking crazy. I mean, seen a lot of fucking crazy shit around Missy Hyatt's place. What can I say? She was always cool to me, and I got nothing bad to say about her. I think she was a good looking chick, and she was always cool to me. So what the hell?
Right, dude. Do you know what? I'm going to cut it off there. I'm having a look here. Crikey, over an hour and a half of your time. I'm going to show the book again. Pow, straight in your face. No gimmicks needed, Chris Candido. When did this come out? It was pretty recent, was it? Was it 2019 or 2020?
January, like whatever, 4 months ago. January, February, March, April.
Oh, dude, so it's that recent then. I thought it came out like a year ago.
Yeah.
I must have seen
it
came
out. Yeah, it came out like mid-January.
All right, so
and it's been kicking ass. And basically the whole thing is, my brother was always just such a cool guy, always so inclusive. Like so many young guys, DM me and they're like, dude, I was fucking nobody at the time, and I asked your brother to watch my match, and he did. And he was just a really awesome guy, really like a true blue guy, and we sorely missed. And everybody who he made an impact on a whole lot of guys, and I'm just happy that I could do this for him. So have his story out there so everybody can, everybody can read it, and that's all he wanted. I guess I'll end with this story as to like. So maybe in like 2003, when he hadn't gotten clean yet, he put like a Von Erich's book on my parents' coffee table, and he was like thumbing through it. My mom's like, Christopher, is this what's gonna happen? You're gonna end up in a coffee table book. He's like, Mom, if people still remember me, 10, 15 years from now, I'd be overjoyed to be in a coffee table book. So that's he wanted to like leave his mark on wrestling, and put it like this too. If you would have told the 13-year-old Chris Candido, you're going to be a WWF champion, ECW champion, NWA champion, WCW champion, but you're going to die at 33. Do you take this? He would say yes. Like that's how crazy he was about wrestling. So the book, I just wanted to show people who Chris was as a person. He was the fucking greatest. And, just keep his name alive as his little brother,
So I think that's. So what I'm going to do is, and I usually explain this before and or straight after the podcast, but I'll tell you now, and everyone on the channel know that I do this, is instead of like I will put the full interview up, but also I put all clips in. So every single clip will go on, and it will have a big mention of the book on every single clip. So, it's not going to be a mention at the beginning, mention at the end. Hope people stick around to the end, like to get reminded. Like every single clip that goes on, your book's shoved right in people's faces. On every single one, and hopefully, thousands of you'll get thousands of views. I can't promise you'll sell thousands of copies, but you'll sell some copies, I'll guarantee on this one. So I'm going to sign off here. So thank you very much for watching. Cheers. I'm not very professional at the intros and the outros. So for Jonny Candido or Johnny Ray, excuse me. Thank you very much for watching. I'll catch you next time. Cheers.
All right, brother. Thanks for having me on.
Cheers, mate.